When my wife, Mariana, shouted in front of the judge, her voice loaded with a contempt that froze the courtroom, "Take your daughter and get out of here, Jamaleo." I swore in that precise instant that I would never look her in the eyes again. What I didn't know, what no one present could have imagined, was that God was already writing the next chapter, preparing the most perfect and ironic scene of poetic justice I have ever seen in my life. If you have ever been humiliated at your lowest point, if they believed you were weak and would never get back up, this video is for you. Hit like, subscribe, and get ready, because this story, my story, proves that when a good man stays silent and places his cause in God's hands, God acts. My name is Jamaleo, although legally I am Joaquim. The nickname was given to me when I was young in my father's workshop, because of my strength, my ability to work tirelessly. I was always a simple man, with rough hands and a soft heart. The kind of man who believes, naively, that love can conquer all, that it endures all things. But I learned, through blows that were emotional rather than physical, that not all hearts beat with the same loyalty. For 15 long years I was married to Mariana. 15 years. We met in college. I was studying civil engineering and working nights at the campus cafeteria to pay for my studies and help out at home. She was from another world. She studied art history, came from a wealthy family, the kind with hyphenated last names and summer homes. Even so, despite the obvious class difference, she chose me. Or at least, that's what I believed for a long time. We had a daughter, Luna. From the moment I held her in my arms for the first time, I knew she was the light of my life, my true purpose. When she was born, I silently promised her that I would do everything humanly possible for her, that I would work until my hands bled, even die if necessary, so that she would never want for anything. But life, I learned later, doesn't ask for dramatic promises. It demands daily character. At first, we were happy. Or at least, we played our parts well. Mariana worked part-time at an art gallery, more as a hobby than out of necessity. I, with my newly earned degree, opened my own small carpentry and furniture design workshop, my true passion. We didn't earn much, barely enough, but we lived with dignity, with love. Until her family, the one that never fully accepted me, started to interfere, to whisper poison in her ear. Her mother, a woman of pearls and a glacial stare, always looked at me with poorly disguised contempt. At family dinners she called me the lucky poor guy, or the carpenter. And her father, an arrogant businessman used to giving orders, never missed an opportunity to remind me that his daughter, his princess, had drastically lowered her standards by marrying me. I endured it. I put up with it for Mariana, for my daughter, to keep the peace. But the poison, drop by drop, eventually took effect. Mariana began to believe them. As the years passed, the way she treated me changed. She became cold, distant. She no longer hugged me warmly when I came home covered in sawdust. She no longer looked at me like the man she admired, but as the man who had anchored her to a life she considered mediocre. She went from saying, "I love you," to, "You are not enough." One night, the night that marked the beginning of the end, when Luna was barely 6 years old, I found her crying in her room. I knelt beside her, my father's heart shattered. I asked her what was wrong. And she, with that brutal innocence of children, told me in a trembling voice, "Mommy said she doesn't want me to be like you. She said you're just a failure and that she deserves something better." That sentence broke my soul. Not because of what she said about me, I had almost gotten used to that, but because of the poison she was consciously injecting into my daughter, our daughter. The arguments became constant, bitter, irreconcilable. And then one morning, just like that, with a coldness that still chills my blood, she served me with a court summons. She wanted a divorce. And full custody. I remember that day in court as if it were a horror movie in slow motion. She arrived looking impeccable, flanked by her father and the most expensive lawyer in the city. I just carried my old leather folder and held tightly to my daughter Luna's small hand. During the hearing, Mariana was ruthless. Her lawyer painted me as a monster, an absent father, a man obsessed with his work, the same work that paid for her luxuries, a failure incapable of providing an emotionally stable environment. She lied about my income, about my character. I couldn't understand how someone could be so cruel, so calculating. And then, the judge, an older man with a tired gaze, asked Mariana directly, "Ma'am, the child's psychological report recommends shared custody. Are you sure you want to waive that possibility and fight for full custody, knowing the damage this process is causing your daughter?" And she, with a cold smile, full of arrogance, stood up and shouted, for everyone in the room to hear, "Yes, Your Honor. I'm sure. In fact, let him have her. Take your daughter and get out of here, Jamaleo. I don't want to see either of you ever again in my life." Absolute silence. A tomb-like silence. The nickname, Jamaleo, the nickname from my hard-working youth, now used as a final insult in a courtroom. The judge looked down, shaking his head, visibly disgusted. I felt my heart break into 1,000 pieces. I looked at my daughter, who was squeezing my hand with all her might. But I didn't say a word. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. I just picked up my daughter, held her tight against my chest, and walked out of that room with what little dignity I had left. That was the darkest day of my life. And, though I didn't know it at the time, the exact beginning of my redemption. Raising Luna alone was the hardest and, at the same time, the most beautiful task of my life. The first few years were hell. Money was scarce. The failed father reputation that Mariana had made sure to spread closed some doors for me. I worked in the carpentry shop during the day and studied accounting and business administration online at night, while Luna slept. I wanted to be prepared, to never be fooled again. But God, in His infinite mercy, gave me a strength I didn't know I had. Every tear of frustration, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, became dry wood for the fire that drove me to keep going for my daughter. Over time, things began to change. My carpentry work, always honest and high quality, started to gain a reputation. But I knew carpentry alone wouldn't be enough. I remembered an old friend of my father's, Don Miguel, the owner of a small construction company who had always admired my work ethic. I went to see him. I asked him for a chance, not as a carpenter, but as a manager. He saw my potential, he saw my hunger. I started from the bottom, again, but I learned fast. I learned about contracts, bidding, logistics. And when Don Miguel, now elderly and with no heirs interested in the business, decided to retire, he made me an offer that changed my life. He left me in charge of the company, with the option to buy it in installments, using the business's own profits. 5 years after that day in court, I was the sole owner of Vargas Construction, one of the most successful and respected companies in the region. Life had rewarded me handsomely. And Luna, my princess, now a brilliant and self-confident teenager, was my greatest pride, my partner in life. Meanwhile, Mariana's life had taken another turn. Her family, the arrogant entrepreneurs, had fallen from grace. Her father was investigated for tax fraud, losing a large part of his fortune. The status they boasted so much about had plummeted. Mariana, without my financial support, which she never valued, and with her father's support diminished, fell off the radar. No one knew much about her. Until life, with its perfect irony, put her back in my path. One day, I received an unexpected call. It was Mariana's father's lawyer. The man had died of a massive heart attack. And, to my absolute surprise, he had left a considerable part of his inheritance, what little was left after the tax investigation, in Luna's name. The irony was almost comical. The man who despised me was now leaving his legacy in the hands of my daughter, his granddaughter, whom his own daughter had abandoned. I went with Luna, who was now 16, to the reading of the will. The office was smaller, less luxurious than the one I remembered from her previous lawyer. And there she was. Mariana, visibly worn down. The expensive clothes couldn't hide the passage of time and, perhaps, regret. Her eyes were red, her gaze empty. When she saw me walk in, me Jamaleo, now dressed in a tailored suit, and saw Luna, who had grown into a beautiful and confident young woman, the nervous smile she had faded. The lawyer, a young man, began to read the will. It was a document full of complicated clauses, a reflection of the father's legal troubles. And then, the key part arrived. The remaining 40% of all my liquid assets and properties shall be transferred to a trust in the name of my only granddaughter, Luna Alves, which shall be administered, with exclusive and irrevocable power, by her father, Mr. Joaquim Jamaleo Alves, until she turns 25. Mariana leaped to her feet, furious. That can't be. It's a trap. That inheritance is mine. I'm his only daughter. The lawyer looked at her calmly, over his glasses. No, you were specifically disinherited in this clause. I quote, I am leaving my daughter Mariana out of this inheritance, as she demonstrated in life that she betrayed the fundamental values of the family, abandoning her own daughter out of pride and greed. The silence was so deep you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Mariana looked at me, her eyes now full of tears, and for the first time in over 10 years, her voice trembled, not with rage, but with desperation. Please, Jamaleo. Please, let me see my daughter. Let's talk about this. I took a deep breath. I could feel Luna's gaze fixed on me. I could feel God giving me a supernatural calm in the midst of this storm. I looked at her, the woman who had broken me, and I replied, Now? Now you remember you have a daughter? Now that there's money involved? Because when you shouted in that courtroom, take her and get out, you buried any right you had, not just as a mother, but as a human being. Today, Luna has a full life, a clean life, a life without the poison of your pride and your ambition. And if you want to see her, if you want to talk to her, you'll have to talk to her, not me. She is no longer a child you can abandon. Mariana fell to her knees, right there in the lawyer's office, weeping inconsolably. But my daughter, Luna, my princess, now a strong teenager with a character forged in truth, stepped forward. She approached her mother. Mom, she said, her voice firm but without hatred. I forgive you. I forgive you for leaving me. But my home, my family, is where there is love, not where there are screams and contempt. And my father, he never abandoned me. It was the most elegant and definitive blow life could have dealt. It didn't come from me. It didn't come from hatred. It came from the truth. Mariana left that office without saying another word. Days later, I learned she had sold the few pieces of jewelry she had left and moved far away, to another city, unable to bear the shame. She never tried to contact us again. Luna, my daughter, studied architecture, and today she works with me at the construction company, designing homes for other families. Homes built on foundations of truth. Every time I look back at that dark day in court, I understand that God does not forget those who are unjustly humiliated. He just waits for the perfect moment to lift up the one who was thrown to the ground, and he does it in a way that surpasses all expectations. When someone screams, "Get out," at you and slams a door in your face, don't despair. Don't fill yourself with hatred. Maybe they are just unknowingly opening the path that God will use to show you what you are truly worth and the glorious future He has for you. The sweetest revenge isn't destroying the one who hurt you. It's living a full life, in peace, while they are forced to face the inevitable consequences of their own cruel decisions. Have you ever been humiliated and life, in an unexpected way, taught them a lesson? Tell me about it in the comments. Like, subscribe, and share this video. And always remember, these are stories of human revenge, yes, but true justice, the kind that restores the soul, comes from above. Jesus is returning. Forgive, but never forget your worth, and never allow a lie to win over the truth.